The Zone Coverage Podcast Network.
They may be drinkers, Robin, but they're also human beings.
Hell yeah, let's get Stinko.
To the Giles and the Goalie podcast. I am your host, Giles Farrell. Next to me is Ben Remington.
Hello.
Ben, it's Nurses Week. So we are letting our girlfriends, who also happen to be nurses, open this otherwise fine podcast.
Good for them. You know, nursing must be a really hard job.
Do you think it's exhausting?
I could only imagine working 3 days a week to be so exhausting.
It really cannot be that hard. And it's like 3 days a week. What else do they do on their days off?
That's just it. Like, they have all this free time. How do they not get my laundry done?
How do they not cook for us?
The garbage? How has that not been taken out? 3 days a week. How tough.
And, like, they just sleep a lot. Like, Jesus.
I know. You know, sometimes I try to tell my girlfriend how I'm having such a hard day at work, and she'll text me back and be like, you want to talk hard days? I had my finger in someone's butt before 9 a.m., and I had their poop on me by 10 a.m., and then all of a sudden I have to defend how hard my job is. And all I want to know was, has the garbage been taken out in your 3 days of work?
I mean, and then she just comes and she starts talking about different body parts that she had to see today and
Penises.
Examine, and all the catheters she had to insert. And I'm like, I don't want to hear about that.
Yeah, like, why do I have to drive down there to see her when she has all this free time
Iowa
to drive up and see me?
Because she only works 3 days a week, so she could drive a lot more
it's all
up
about
to
that
Minnesota.
3 days a week.
All right, so here are your real hosts, Giles Farrell.
Happy Nurses Week.
And on that fine note, we are starting this podcast off by looking for the burn cream.
I had no idea we were such staunch misogynists, Giles. Suddenly,
Man,
this is news to me.
We just found a lot of built-up anger.
Yeah. I'm not even home 5 days a week. I don't know where all this anger comes
You
from.
give them the microphone, and, man, the gloves come right off.
Oh, jeez.
That's
like
some Brad Marchand level of trolling right there.
I'd take a lick over that. That was much more. That was more of a Matt Cook thing right there.
I'll
what that
leave that
was.
to you two. That's that's for behind closed doors.
That's a DJ Khaled joke right there. Is what that is.
No, I am the actual host of this podcast, Giles Farrell. Next to me is the actual Ben Remington.
Hello.
Back in the flesh from Seattle, Washington.
I am.
Ben, would you like to talk about Amazon?
No, Amazon is evil entity. I just have dealt with them a lot in the last 3 months, and I'm
About Starbucks?
tired.
Wait, that's a different podcast.
Right, yes. No, we're not talking about Starbucks on this podcast. That's not. We're a Caribou podcast. We are available to be bought by Caribou to contrast another hockey podcast that's not really a hockey podcast. It's more of a beat writer's life podcast. Yeah. It's more of a travel and coffee podcast.
Yeah. Sorry, I wrote out girlfriends, but I didn't know how to group that together, so I just put girlfriends.
It's a temporary term anyway. That's when you're putting fingers in butts. Is when you take your ring off, right?
It's It's lovely outside, but it is on fire in here, I gotta tell you.
We're still getting roasted
wow.
after we got the microphones back.
Yeah, we're still burning. So it is Nurses Week, so if you happen to be going anywhere where there's a nurse, be kind to them. Bring them some flowers.
Yes.
Do something nice.
Give them a slushie.
Don't don't poop on them, please.
Or make them
Yeah, just
extract poop from you.
Ben, I gotta be honest. It was an awful news week. And by awful, I mean there was none.
Yeah, it really was.
So we have not much to offer on this show for newsworthy things, but we do have a few things to hit on before we venture into no man's land.
Interim GM Brent Flair was busy this week.
He was signing some players to some contracts,
Yeah.
and the first of which is Sam Ennis, who got a new 2-year deal, and he
Ennis.
led the Iowa Wild in points this last year. And for somebody who got to cover the Iowa Wild a little bit this year, and it was good to see Sam Ennis get a new contract. And you hope that in the next GM, whoever that may be, a call-up to the Wild will follow.
Yeah, his was a 2-year deal or two-way deal.
Two-way deal.
2-year, two-way. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I think that he's certainly proven that he can produce at the AHL level. Obviously, that doesn't always translate to the NHL level, but it'll be interesting to see how much of a shot he gets. I don't think he was given much of a shot in training camp last year to make the team, which is understandable because he didn't have a whole lot of time with Iowa before that. He had, I think, a season before that. But it'll be interesting to see what kind of shot he gets to make the team this fall. And if he can, I know you've seen him play and you've liked what you've seen. The noted Iowa Wild correspondent Brandon Slike is a big fan of his and thinks he can play at the NHL level. So, yeah, I mean, he very well could be a staple of the fourth line next season for the Minnesota Wild if he has a good training camp showing.
And Sam Ennis is just an energy guy. He, as Justin Kloos said in a story I did in February, Justin Kloos spent most of the year on the line with Sam Ennis, and he said, when you're in the offensive zone, you just look for him because when he gets the puck, he just makes things happen, and he's just all over the ice, and obviously work to be done in the defensive zone and whatnot. But the team that's just looking for depth scoring, maybe giving Sam Ennis a look could do them good next year, but we'll see where that goes.
Yeah. There was an article. There was an article on Wild Extra a couple years back when Sam Ennis was signed, asking if Sam Ennis is the next Justin Fontaine. And as funny as that is, on an inside joke level, it's kind of maybe a relatively decent upside for him. I think not an upside. I think maybe his upside's a little higher than that, but that could be a decent role for him. I mean, we all saw what Justin Fontaine brought to this team for a couple of seasons, and even though he ended up kind of washing out afterwards, he was productive. He was a productive player for the Wild for a couple of years, and in a very limited kind of fourth line role, and that's maybe what we could see out of Sam Ennis.
Yeah. The other big thing from the week was Minnesota Wild signed prospect Dmitry Sokolov to his entry-level contract, coming off a big year in the OHL. 50 goals, 46 assists, I believe, for 96 points. He was drafted back in 2015, so the Wild had until June 1 to get him signed. And, he was a late-round pick, but for that much skill that he's shown in the OHL, it was just a move that cried out that needed to happen because the Wild are badly lacking in the skill department with prospects. And
right.
You hope that Sokolov can kind of figure out his other issues with maybe Iowa next year, and hopefully they can turn him into the goal scorer that they hope he can be.
Yeah, the list of guys who scored 50 goals in the OHL, OHL is a really very offensive league, but it's not a super long list, and the only guy to score more than 50 goals last year in the OHL was Alex DeBrincat. And DeBrincat had a pretty solid year for the Blackhawks, kind of in that same mold where he was a kind of young guy, I think spent a lot of time in the third line, but scored a fair amount for a guy of that role, a guy of that age. So, I don't know that we'll see Sokolov a whole lot in the NHL next season, but it's very possible he goes to the AHL and kind of tears it up a little bit and forces the Wild hand on getting called up around midseason.
And it's worth pointing out that the Iowa Wild did pretty solid work with prospects they had this year, and look at what Nick Seeler and how he progressed here in the last 2 years, and Carson Soucy and how he progressed just in the 1 year, and these guys had to play meaningful minutes for the Wild at a crucial point in the year, and when you look at their body of work in the AHL and you think maybe that's not going to be good, but they did pretty decent work for Minnesota, and you hope that they can kind of translate that into Sokolov. It's Derek Lalonde and company. I would assume that Derek Lalonde and staff will still be back next year under a new GM, but we'll see. So that was my one prospect signing I really hoped would happen this year, and we weren't sure. It was really flying under the radar. But Brent Flair getting the job done, and he had a few other signings this last week. There was a defenseman from Sweden.
Yeah.
I think that was another two-way contract.
Yep.
And it's just kind of getting odds and ends guys signed before probably a GM is named at some point. And we kind of had it pegged that we would have more on that this week, but that didn't happen.
Right, and there's been some speculation that Paul Fenton is kind of the front runner and has been for a while. And it's kind of, it's kind of a mixed bag as to whether these guys in the middle of a playoff run will join their new team or not. Chuck Fletcher joined the Wild in the middle of the Penguins Stanley Cup run. It's understandable if Fenton doesn't, if he is the guy as we've kind of heard. But then they're interviewing other candidates as well this weekend, so it's really kind of tough to gauge on that situation. But you got to think they'll have something done soon. I mean, I'd be absolutely dumbfounded if they didn't have a GM in the next couple of weeks here. I mean, you can't go through mid-May without. No. I mean, you've got there's just way too much draft prep and free agency prep to do.
Because
there.
Eventually, you have to have organizational meetings as all the scouts and people convene and they get gear for the draft. That's not too far down the road, and I know Craig Leopold wants to get this done because he's having pretty major hip surgery, has been reported.
Yeah, do we know when that is happening?
I think it's this week.
Nice.
So I think there would like to be put a bow on it, if you will, for this search. But see
Nashville
what
could be done as soon as tomorrow night. So I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, another short-lived podcast life.
Yeah, no kidding.
But other GM candidates who've been kind of interviewed this week is Tom Fitzgerald. I know the Wild are maybe looking at Bill Guerin of Pittsburgh, although it's kind of up in the air because Pittsburgh is in the middle of a playoff run right now. And then reported Saturday by Michael Russo, The Athletic, former Toronto Maple Leafs general manager Dave Nonis was in town for an interview. And I got to tell you, I didn't see that till Sunday morning. And boy, oh boy, was that something to read while you're drinking coffee.
Yeah, I don't understand. He was the guy that signed Clarkson, right?
Yeah.
And
that was
traded Kessel.
That was the offseason after the Leafs blew that 4-1 lead
right.
to Boston. And then they had the most reactionary offseason you'll ever see. And
right.
as Down Goes Brown said on his podcast, that was probably the worst offseason in recent memory.
Yeah.
You can't hire Dave Nonis.
No, that would be awful.
Even if this is some Tom Dundon level of crap going on behind the scenes we don't know about, hire somebody else beside Dave Nonis.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd be almost surprised if it wasn't Fenton at this point, but who knows? You could be wrong on that.
So, I think that was all the news from this week.
Mm-hmm. Is that all the signings? They had just those three?
Yeah. There was another prospect.
Yeah.
I got to look it up. It wasn't in my notes. But it was just one of their 6-round picks.
Mm-hmm.
I can't see it. We'll maybe hit on it next week, but yikes. That was literally the news week for the Minnesota Wild. It has gone from slow to slower to flatline. So hopefully there's a little bit more in the bag for us to talk about next week. Any other thoughts on the junk we just went over?
No, I'm with you where I was very glad they got the Sokolov signing done. He's a guy that I was very excited about. He was a guy who was touted as almost a first-round pick in that 2016 draft, and fell because of conditioning concerns that season. He had kind of gotten a bad rap as a lazy player, and but still obviously showed an immense amount of skill. And so it was nice to see the Wild take a flyer on that guy, and so far so good. I mean, like I said, 50 OHL goals doesn't guarantee any kind of Hall of Fame candidacy or anything, but it's a very good sign because even though it's an offensive league, it's still something that Connor McDavid never done.
Right.
It's still something that only a select few players do each year, even though it is kind of a gaudy number.
Well, since that was the only Minnesota Wild newsworthy stuff from this last week, I know it's riveting. Then the NHL playoffs still carry on, and
really,
as I noted on Twitter.com, the ultimate authority and takeries on the internets, the Tampa Bay Boston series was grabbing the spotlight this last week in the most wrong way, as Brad Marchand once again licked an opponent. This time it was Ryan Callahan of the Lightning. After doing so in the first round, on which there were conflicting reports out there about the NHL warning Brad Marchand about licking his opponent.
That's right.
And so he did so again here in round two, to which the NHL officially
very
talked
much
to Brad
publicly
Marchand. Don't do that.
Yeah.
I do have a take or 2 or 7 on this particular case because, good Lord, I love it when the best hockey we see all year gets overshadowed by a player licking another player.
I think it's hilarious. Like as far as like from the Bush League aspect of it, it's Brad Marchand. Like that guy he's like a walking Bush League basically. Like he does stuff that hockey players just shouldn't do, and so on that side, like nobody's really surprised by it. Anybody who's familiar with Brad Marchand's body of work, but it's so ridiculous that's what we're talking. Granted, that series it's over now, but that series hasn't even really been all that particularly good. But that's the headline to come out of all the NHL playoffs right now, not the awesome series that we're seeing. I mean, all the other 3 series are actually really, really good.
Tampa just closed it out.
Yeah, Tampa just
went in 5.
closed, but the other 3 series are great. But what's the headline? Brad Marchand is licking people.
Well, it's done now, but I will say I'm not surprised Brad Marchand did this.
No.
This is what Brad Marchand does. He's a really good hockey player.
Right.
But he's also a really good aggregator.
Yes.
He is good at getting under your skin, and that's what he's trying to do. But now the NHL has, of course, intervened and said, okay, this is something you can't do. Like, it's not in the rule book yet, but I'm guessing maybe in the 2018-19 season you're going to find that in the rule book.
They mentioned it, not explicitly licking, obviously, but they mentioned something about inciting other players. Like once a player is warned about something, if you do something else to incite another player, it is a minor or major penalty. I forget which. So they did cite a rule where he actually could be penalized for this during a game, but obviously there is no specific rule about licking. This isn't the Mighty Ducks, so they don't just make up roping penalties as they go along.
2 minutes for roping?
Roping? It's a new one on me.
I love the Mighty Ducks. Indeed. I was trying to think if somebody was licking in the Mighty
No,
Ducks.
the roping penalty is what I was referencing.
Yeah,
but yeah.
No. Do you have any hot takes on this?
Okay, we've got some experts on the...
I have a couple things to share. First of all, if the coach, Bruce Cassidy, has to actually put him to the side and say, listen, pal, you got to stop that licking. Like, seriously, that's where the NHL is at with this. Second of all, have we not heard about the mumps outbreak that happened? I mean, to bring this back to the Wild, this happened, last year, 2 years ago? Yeah, essentially every year there's hockey, there is a mumps outbreak. Not because people are licking each other, but because they're coming in contact with enough germs to get mumps that way. And now we're licking each other. And, yeah, this guy is a complete nutburger. Like 1,000%. I've watched him play. I've watched him lick.
Yep.
Without a doubt, nutburger. Douche canoe 5,000 times over.
Like, are we in third grade, first of all?
Well,
like,
it's not even that. Like, is he trying to intimidate other players?
let
Is he
me
trying-
lick you.
Yeah, like what is the purpose of the licking? If we can get to the base of that, we
Why
can
are
probably
we
stop
licking
the
each
licking. Like, I
No,
just-
that's disgusting. Like,
it's so childish.
It
like,
is.
punch that guy in the throat. If he is gonna lick your
Yeah.
face after like
Just-
the whistle blows, like
Yep.
punch him in the frickin' throat. Good, then punch him in the
Then
frickin'
punch him in the
throat.
f***ing throat
He
and
shouldn't
won't
be
lick again
like
because he won't have a tongue.
he should be in the penalty box more than anybody else. Then, like,
Yep.
I just don't understand, like, where the licking came from. Was it a joke on the inside where I'm going to lick people in the playoffs to throw them off their game? Or am I just going to be creepy and
Yeah.
lick people? I think the thing that, like, bothers... Sorry, Jamie, to, like, completely take over. I'm very passionate about the licking in the NHL. I just don't understand, like... It didn't just start with, like, a little lick. Like, it'd be cute if it was, like, a little lick on the nose or something. This is, like, full on from jawline to upper hairline. Like, lick across the entire
Ew.
cheek. It's not just, like, a little kiss on the cheek or a little lick of this. It's, like, straight up disgusting, lick your whole face, and then just look at you.
Well, I'm just going to throw in a fact for your listeners in case if they're ever on a trivia show.
And this has been proven by Colgate.com.
Sponsored by Colgate.com. The average tongue is 4 inches long.
That's it? That's the fact? Okay.
This is the Giles and the Goalie podcast presented by Colgate, the leading hockey podcast of tongue facts.
Yes. Hockey players known for their teeth.
Has he licked Friars once? Just now?
He licked in the first round as well.
I saw that.
Yeah.
My question was if he's ever licked before or if this is the first licking.
Because he licked a lot.
And Ben told me about the playoffs, which I'm not living under a rock. I did watch the first round of the playoffs, gentlemen. So I did see the initial licking. I just didn't know if this was something in like the
No,
previous.
there's really been no
And
history
so we
to
really
this.
have no idea where this came from.
Has
It's
there
Brad
ever
Marchand. That's
has there
where it
been an
came from.
investigation of the licking in past NHL games? Like,
If my patient ever licked me, let's just say they would not be playing in round 2 of the playoffs.
they would have a pillow over their head. It's called pillow therapy.
Happy Nurse Week, everybody. This went off the rails more than we even thought it would, I think.
Good.
Yeah. It's a slow news week, people.
Yeah. Was there... Oh, now we're really just setting it on fire, aren't we? Anything else besides the Brad Marchand licking incident? I mean, we got, as we record here on Sunday afternoon, we got Winnipeg up Nashville 3-2. I mean, good Lord, the Jets just took a blowtorch to the Predators in
man.
Game 5.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, the both those series have been really great. And actually, if you've been able to stay awake for the Sharks and Knights series, that one's been pretty decent too.
Yeah.
I'm really interested to see what happens in all the Game 6s, obviously, because I think we're going to get a Game 7 somewhere. We got to get a Game 7 out of there somewhere. And
It's going to come in the one I don't want it to be in.
I have a feeling it is too. But it is what it is. But Game 7s are great. So I know Game 7s have not been kind to a particular franchise that wears red, white, and blue. But it should be a lot of fun. It should be if it comes to happen, I should say. Won't be fun for you necessarily, but
No, I can't. I can't stomach another Washington Game 7.
or at least they finally figured out who their goalie is.
Well,
There's that.
Yeah, I'm glad they went back to Vezina Trophy Braden Holtby. Like, I can't believe this playoff started with Philip Grubauer.
I said that right away before it even happened, and
This will only have a short shelf life, but I'll say I have no confidence in Washington to win Game 6. I'm still fully expecting there to be a Game 7, and then Pittsburgh wins Game 7. So
That's entirely fair given the history of that matchup.
I'm glad that Barry Trotz needed 5 periods to figure out Devontae Smith-Pelly on the top line in place of Tom Wilson was not going to work.
Yeah.
So he threw in Jacob Vrana, who scored the game-winning goal.
That's been tremendous.
Game 5.
I have a fun Minnesota sports fact for all of you listeners out there. There's something in the medical field called a Minnesota tube, which was developed at the University of Minnesota. You might want to fact check that because I'm not sure if that's correct. However, if someone is having a very large bleed somewhere like in their esophagus, we will put a football helmet on them and then put a tube down them into their stomach, inflate the balloon in their stomach until it pulls back enough to cause traction to close off their little entrance point to their stomach. And then we tie that tube to the football helmet to provide constant traction to them so that the bleeding doesn't go further into their body and that the blood we can suction out. So that, my friends, is the Minnesota tube.
Have you heard about the Iowa tube? It has to deal with fertilization. I'm just kidding.
I was going to say there's a corn joke coming in there. Does it have to be a Gophers football helmet?
It actually is maroon and gold in our current work utility room.
Well, you also work at the U of M, so
they're just as useful.
I do. I have never heard of the Minnesota tube prior to my previous employer, which I can't believe has now been leaked on the podcast.
Oh, well, yeah.
Oh, whoops.
It's a big building. I'm not putting you in any kind of danger, I don't think. Good luck editing this.
Yeah, it's going to take forever. Do you have any strong takes on the Pittsburgh-Washington series?
Sir, you shouldn't lick anybody. That's not okay.
That's not the Pittsburgh-Washington series. No.
Get that out. I have nothing. Do you think I've watched that series?
Oh, so you're just trolling me last night by saying go Penguins.
Yeah, I'm for the Penguins. The Capitals should just lose, so we got that.
It's super productive.
She can't even know when to troll me. Bless her heart. So that's Pittsburgh, Washington. I mean, we got Boston, Tampa Bay just closed, and your sweet Golden Knights are 1 win away from the Western Final.
Yeah, it's exciting. Yeah.
Let's go Sharks. Let's go Sharks.
Oh, yeah. Good luck with that.
Which, my friends, is if the Vegas Golden Knights win the next game and advance to the Western Conference Final, they will have matched the furthest the Minnesota Wild have ever been in 18 season in the playoffs. And they have done so in just 1 year.
Okay, that's fair, but they've also, I mean, you can't just compare to Minnesota Wild. Like, the Blue Jackets have still never won a playoff series.
Whose fault is that?
And the Jets just won their first playoff series ever. So they would have to reach the conference finals in order to match their best franchise. And the Preds just did it last year for the first time.
I'm just trying to make Minnesota sports fans more sad.
Do you think they need help with that? I don't think they need help with that. No.
And as Raz just pointed out, there's more useful things to do with a Gophers football helmet than football.
That's true. That's true, yeah.
So I good on the UM Health for finding that more useful thing. I know that's not a high bar to clear, as
true.
Gopher football is not one to have high standards.
Right.
Or the athletics department in general.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Do you think Nashville can come from behind and
I mean, Game 6 is in Winnipeg.
That's tough.
I don't think.
Although Nashville did win Game 4, which
was
the first home loss for the Jets in quite some time.
True. I after the way that they got ragdolled in the last game, I mean, it would take. I mean, I don't know. Nashville could win that game. I'm not saying that they're damned to lose it, like the Wild were damned to lose Game 5, because they absolutely were. I think the Preds have a lot more fight in them than that, having come as close as they did last season. But man, I mean, the Jets, if Connor Hellebuck is on his game at all, the Jets are just too much. The Jets offense is just way, way too much for a lot of teams to handle, let alone the Preds, who I think have their flaws as well.
I'd almost expect the Predators to push back in Game 6.
Yeah.
And that includes PK Subban guaranteeing a Game 7.
Yeah,
So-
but what's he supposed to say?
I mean, they're really good, though. Like,
I'm so tired of the guaranteeing wins. Like, what are they supposed to say?
I will guarantee that I will have adult beverage in 2 minutes.
It's like, yeah, if you're going to guarantee something that, like, is very much within your own personal control. Like, PK Subban could have the game of his life, and it doesn't matter. Like, he could still, it's still a team game, and you still, like, it. If Pekka Rinne wants to guarantee a Game 7, that might mean a little bit more to me, but it's not completely in PK's hands, so it's like, well, who cares?
All right, we are on to the mailbag.
Woo.
Ever so quickly. We got a few questions from Twitter, and then we have a few questions from Present Company.
The Peanut Gallery.
I wasn't going to say that, but
I said it.
Bitches who can save your life right now. AKA Peanut Gallery.
please don't break my ribs.
It's not your ribs, it's your sternum. Yeah. Get it right.
Sternum, yeah.
We should have had them on for Zach Parese's fractured sternum.
I think she talked.
Talk about that. Let's talk
No,
about
that's okay. That's fine.
Yeah, it's old news.
He'll be fine.
Nobody cares anymore because the
Zach
Wild are
Parise.
done.
We'll get to him, actually.
All right, first question from Josh. If you could trade anyone from this team if there was no movement clauses, who would it be first?
Funny you should mention that, Josh. There's a certain player that I don't think has a very long shelf life that has a very long contract. If it's just one player,
Ryan
is that
Suter.
just one player off of the no movement clause?
All right,
Or would
I
you
guess
say
he would say who
first?
would be the first out the door.
Well, I don't know that any of them need to go, like explicitly need to go. And I don't think the return for any of them would be as good as people would hope. Like, it'd be nice to get rid of Parise's contract because he's got 7 more years on his contract. And we're going to get burned by the cap or capture penalty on him. It's going to happen. Like, I would almost guarantee it. There's no way with his health that he's going to play until he's 40. Ryan Suter with the ankle injury kind of throws another thing into that where it's like, I would, we've talked about we would take him, but now it's not quite as we're not quite as sure of that.
Michael Russo continues to put if. Like, I don't think people really grasp. Like, I think that's just glossed over in these articles where he just kind of drops, like, if Suter returns. That's
Right.
a large if.
Yeah.
Like, that's not. Nobody's talking about that.
Yeah.
He is saying if.
Yeah.
If.
Well, but
If.
but on the plus side, if he does, or if he doesn't, they could pull the whole Marian Hossa, injury reserve kind of BS.
Shoulder
And
pad itch.
Yeah, exactly. They can basically Chris Pronger him for the next 7 years or
Tom
whatever.
Reed itch.
Yeah, exactly. And then that would be it. So, I mean, the Suter thing I'm not quite as worried about, I guess. I'm more worried about Zach Parise and his lingering injuries almost every season, it seems like. So, especially with his size and the way that he plays.
Next question from Serious Mashup. He hit the mailbag this week.
Good.
He asked, how about signing Michael Grabner? Weird he should ask that. And put him on a speed line with Zucker.
I
Hey,
mean,
I'm for it, but I'm guessing Michael Grabner is going to be wanting a pretty large contract.
Yeah.
Because he was vastly underpaid this year, and he'll probably want some significant money.
yeah, you can wish in one hand and crap in the other and see which one is filled first.
I mean, if he wants to take a 1-year deal again to see if he can win somewhere, great. I'd be happy to give him that deal, but I don't see it.
Right, and it's going to be interesting to see what this GM does as far as from a creativity standpoint of not only, getting rid of contracts, but who he takes in because, he's probably going to do some things and shake up some things, but who knows what that actually is going to look like. Like, who knows what players he's going to get rid of, how much money that's going to free up, and what he's going to do with that money. So,
The one from Serious Mashup. Where will Dubnik's future successor come from?
I wrote about this very briefly in my mailbag this week. I don't think they have one in the organization right now. We've seen Kapanen and Stezka. I just don't know that those guys are bona fide NHL starters at the end of the day. They were kind of late round flyers, and I wrote about it in reference to the draft, where the Wild still hold a first round pick for right now, and it wouldn't be the dumbest thing in the world if they were able to find their goaltender of the future. I mean, that's not exactly what the team needs at this very moment, but wouldn't be a terrible idea to draft a goaltender if they come across one they really like in the first round.
I don't know about the first round, but
well, I mean, if there's one there,
they've got 3 picks in the third round this upcoming draft, so
sure.
maybe you'd like to see them use one of those on a goaltender.
Yeah, at least, yes. I'm just saying if you want to get a top play kind of guy.
I think we're seeing a trend now in drafts where no goaltenders going in the first round anymore.
Not really, no. But one of the top
late
goaltending
first.
prospects, Ilya Samsonov, was a first rounder.
Yeah.
Carter Hart, I don't think he was, but I think he was a second or third. To your point.
I think so. Question from our friend at DSM Captive,
Brandon Slike.
otherwise known as Brandon Slike. Friend of the show. He's moving up here. Also making the trek out of Iowa.
He's making the 35, the total luxury limousine.
I'm just getting all these people out of Iowa.
Giles is single-handedly reducing the
The
population
state
of Iowa.
better name something after me. Doing them a service. Whew, is it going to be a long ride home? He asked what our thoughts on Sokolov is. We kind of hit on that earlier, but obviously this is a guy they need to get in the system, and they did so. And just getting him into the Iowa with the coaching staff, at least next year, will be very beneficial to him, I hope. And
I think it's pretty safe bet he ends up in Iowa next year.
Iowa could also really use a guy of his skill set.
Yep, and I think that'll work out really well. So, because they're probably going to replace Sam Annis. To our point earlier, Sam Annis is probably going to be, a fourth line guy with the Wild. You would think he can kind of hold down that role, and so they're going to need somebody who can put up a lot of points, and that's definitely Dmitry Sokolov.
All right, well, that was our Twitter mailbag. Do we have some mailbags from the present company?
Okay, I got one. If you could get anybody from Iowa Wild right now, would you bring anybody up at all right now?
Well, we talked about Sam Annis being a guy who he just re-signed.
Never mind.
So, yeah, he would be one.
Ben hits the low-hanging fruit, so I'll go with Justin Kloos, former Gopher.
Well, Kyle Rao.
Him too.
Yeah. Rah.
Do you think that with home team advantage, you guys have talked a lot recently about, they're going to win because it's on home ice? Is it more the crowd? Is it what they're used to skating, the lighting? What really gives a team, not just in hockey, but a team in general, that home team advantage?
Well, I think Ben's probably going to hit the thing I'm thinking of, so I will go with, I think players are very superstitious, and I think they are very well-oiled machines when it comes to their home game day routine. And I think on the road it differs maybe a little bit, and they maybe sometimes have issues with that, whether it's trying to get an afternoon nap or whatnot before a game.
The right pregame meal.
So, yeah, and also maybe not having a night out on the town the night before. So
spending a night out in Winnipeg is different than spending a night out in Nashville?
That would maybe be one of my theories, but I think you have a different one that's probably a little more X's and O's variety.
Well, there's that too. I mean, with hockey, the last change is pretty important, and so that's definitely part of it. But from a psychology standpoint, there is something to playing in your home arena in a lot of places where, let's face it, there's a lot of just motivation that you require, just being an athlete, and how much you can dig deeper and how much adrenaline plays into that. And when you're in your home arena, I think there's just a lot more of that available.
So the real question is, who do I bring back in my Jeep, pack in my Jeep to take back to Iowa, and then who do I bring back, transport
you
back?
would trade
for you
a
guys
wild player
free?
for, okay.
Yeah, who do I bring back?
All right, well.
Monday morning, they better be ready.
I don't know if Marcus Foligno is small enough to fit in your trunk. He's a pretty large man.
I don't know.
You're not as down on Foligno as I am?
No, I think I tend to go with our friend Tony from Hoggy Wilderness on Marcus Foligno, where he's done pretty much what you expected of him, and
Yeah.
it's the
Not a good-
contract he signed.
Oh, yeah, no, that.
That tends to bring that down.
Right.
But if I'm trying to send somebody down, I don't know. Like,
I think it's fairly. I mean, I think. Well, this summer it's gonna be tough because there's gonna be so many guys coming and going. So it'd be easy to say sending down a guy like Olofsson, a guy like Susie, but they might not be here anyway. So it's like, well. And as far as bringing up, yeah, Annis will be a guy that comes up. I think Klus and Rao will be guys that come up. Otherwise, there's not a great amount of prospects to get super excited about with the Iowa Wild, other than those guys other than guys who are, not necessarily. Can you make a trip to Russia by chance? Can you drive to Russia and sneak somebody in the back of your car?
I think that's on my way home.
Yeah, can you just swing?
Perfect.
Can
Then
you
we
swing
got somebody
through
you can smuggle out
Moscow?
of there.
And do you have a large blanket we could hide a hockey player? Actually, he's in Denmark right now for the juniors.
Yeah.
Or for the World
That's even better.
Championships.
And then you will be thankful for this Iowan.
Yeah, then you would be a hero. We would probably make a statue of you.
I think there was a little bit of shade in that remark, too. Any other questions?
I would like to wrap this up with a medical question, gentlemen. Why is it more common for a female to get a physical under the age of 40, but for all of you males under the age of 40, you never find it necessary to get physicals, to have your cholesterol checked, to have your blood sugar checked for early
Prostate
onset
exams.
diabetes, prostate exams, get your blood pressure checked for that hypertension. Let's hear it, boys, with your all outstanding healthy diets and full-on exercise routines.
So we've known each other for a year and a half, quite a while. How many times have I gone to the doctor in that time?
I'm pretty sure it doesn't matter how many times you've had to go to the doctor. It's more so, why have you not seeken yourself to go get a regular routine annual exam?
I just caught the emotion from across the table. Because guys don't like going to the doctor. I don't know. This isn't really that hard of a question. I don't feel like.
So you don't care enough about your health?
No.
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Because we're guys. That's what we
have
don't
prostates.
care.
You need that checked.
I'm not a person to just jump to conclusions, but if I were to just look at you or your co-host Giles, I would most likely say that one, if not two of you, have high cholesterol. One, if not two of you, has high blood pressure. And one, if not two of you, is a pre-diabetic.
Preach it.
I'm definitely pre-diabetic. I can almost guarantee that.
I'm perfect. I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know why this is why that would be surprising to you at all.
I guess I just don't understand why girls have the stigma of needing to go and get a physical every year and get probed by their medical professional physician.
Probed.
Right. Probed with a capital P. That ain't fun.
And your prostate needs probed, okay?
Yeah, your prostate risk increases as you're aging closer to the 40s, Benjamin. And so I just feel, as someone in the healthcare field, I should let you both know that you should be seeking medical attention for preventative care. More healthcare dollars are wasted on treating people to get them back to their baseline of recovery, and there's not enough effort on prevention.
Yes.
Is this a question or a lecture? I'm not really.
Both.
This is a question. The question was, why have neither of you obtained a physical healthcare exam within the last 5 years?
Why have you, Giles Farrell, not obtained a prostate exam?
She's really stuck on the prostate part of things, I feel like. That's very much her primary focus here.
I lose sleep in the fact that she's right next to me and could just give me one at any moment in my sleep.
Don't threaten me with a good time. I'm just saying. I think that's just how guys are. Guys are just, we're big dumb animals. We're big dumb. We're big dumb meat-eating, humping animals, and that's all we really concern ourselves with.
It just takes 2 fingers.
It's true. Sometimes just one will feel enough of the prostate to get a good indicator on if there's any concerns or not. So you're saying that females are enjoying going to the doctor and being probed?
Which is not true.
Not
I just want to throw that out there.
No, I'm just saying
no, it's
you're
awful.
much more concerned with your personal health than guys are.
I don't think I'm actually concerned about my personal health. I just feel that it has been ingrained in us as individuals that we need to get annual exams. But the newest recommendations are every 3 years for the probing. But still, the men are not probed enough. That is the recap of this show. Thank you, everybody, for listening to us.
Get your prostate exam.
All you men out there, go ahead and get your prostates examined by a healthcare professional.
I was going to say, this is a good promo for get a checkup or something.
Well, there's those commercials with the TV doctors. There's that one. I feel like they've done their advertising on this topic.
It's like the Bobcast, every couple times a year when he talks about checking your nuts.
Yeah,
and he's
passionate about it.
I give him credit. He can actually hold a straight face.
I have a mailbag question. Do you check your nuts?
And on that note, as Jamie was about to ask that, her and I both reached for the microphone at the same time. And I was about to state that I have questioned Ben about this in the past on if he has ever done a testicular exam. Fun fact, did you know that most men, their testicular cancer is found by their significant other during foreplay?
Okay, well,
whoa,
step up your game then. No.
Wow.
We're done with this topic.
Shame on you, Mr. Remington.
Why did you give her a mic?
Shame on you. Do you want to talk about that?
No,
Let's talk
I don't.
about that.
I was going to say when you said you should give yourself a testicular exam, I was going to say nightly. But then you brought up the foreplay.
You want me to give you
No. I was saying
no.
I do it nightly. Then you brought up the foreplay thing, and that just opened a totally different door.
Well, I don't know much about the male version of pleasuring oneself. I did not know that it often involved a testicular exam.
Well, it doesn't have to, but it certainly can.
Said.
It doesn't have to, but it
But
can.
if you were to say that when you enjoy self-service gas stations,
God,
that was included in it,
I guess.
You need to go get yourself a physical exam with your healthcare insurance.
Yes. We're done with this topic now.
And you should get probed.
Good God.
Are you going to get probed?
Eventually. If it makes you happy. All right. Yeah.
I am not going to get a lot of sleep tonight because she's asked me
You're
3 times
edit.
in the last 2 minutes about a prostate exam.
Well, I thought you meant from the editing, but yeah, that too.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's just that little stretch in there that has to be bleeped out.
Right.
Happy Nurses Week.
Yeah. So do we have anything else as far as another topic we want to hit on?
I mean, I guess.
I have one last mailbag question.
All right.
What is one thing you appreciate about your significant other being a nurse on this Nurses Week?
I just got death glare threat. I don't know what that was.
That's a loaded question. No, we are thinking about it carefully. It's why we're not answering.
Oh boy.
No, I am appreciative that you know more about what's wrong with my body than I do because I don't care what's wrong with my body, and I need somebody to look after it because I don't want to.
Is that why you're marrying me?
Yes.
That is why I proposed to you.
Yeah. That's the whole point, just for the free health care at home. Don't give in to this terrorism, Giles.
That's... Ditto what he said. Yeah, I guess I'll be thankful for down the road that my prostate will be in excellent health in one way or another.
Well, it won't be an excellent health necessarily, but it'll be routinely checked, at least.
Checks will be frequent.
It'll be swollen from the constant checks.
Coming in hot.
Oh, good God.
All right, I guess we can go around and do some final thoughts.
Okay. Are we sure we want to do that?
Yeah.
Okay, final thoughts.
As the future Mrs. Remington, I would like to start with this. Thank you, all of you nurses out there, for all of the hard work you do. I'm sure many of you are listening right now. Tons of you. But for all those guys out there, aside from getting your annual physicals, which I highly recommend, thank you for putting up with a lot of us nurses and dealing with our staff. So thank you. Happy Nurses Week, everybody.
I would also like to say thank you to the nurses out there, because trust me, I know what you have to put up with. So thank you. And also thank you for listening to this awesome podcast. It's produced awesomely, as I can tell myself. You guys do a great job. So thank you for listening.
It's very heartfelt.
I'm kind of surprised she started pandering to us at the end there.
Yeah, no, it's really kind of
was
too little too late kind of
yeah,
thing. Yeah.
The roast is done.
Is it because I talked about prostate exams?
Yeah, mostly.
Yeah. I'm not sure what Tom's going to think of this. He's either going to find it very hilarious or...
I will say it's the most K-fan thing we've ever done.
Maybe Tom will want an appointment to get his prostate checked.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah, we may have
He's
saved
gonna
Tom.
Saving lives here on the Giles and the Goalie podcast.
Tom will thank us later.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure he will.
There hasn't been much yawning this podcast.
He's wide awake.
Yeah, very awake.
My final thought... I don't even know. There's a lot to process from this podcast.
I know. Our poor listeners.
And
They're better informed.
I think they'll enjoy it.
Maybe. Yeah.
I mean, I hope so.
Well, my final thought would be we're just kind of waiting on this GM hire for anything to happen. But I don't know. I mean, until then, I'm not too worried about it. Just enjoy the playoffs. I mean, obviously, we don't want them to hire Nonis or anything like that. But I think if Fenton's the guy and we have to wait a little bit, I'm okay with that.
What if the holdup on the general manager search is that person's physical exam?
I don't know that physicals are protocol for front office employees, but
I mean,
they have to
be
do
somewhere.
Yeah, but I don't know that it's necessarily like a part of the deal. Like, it's certainly a good idea, but it's like it's not like it's a trade that's rejected because of a physical.
My final thought is, go Capitals. Please, God, let this be the year. If not, there will be a thoroughly sad Giles and the Goalie podcast for you next week.
Yeah.
Not that there haven't been many of those before.
True.
But that can wrap it up. Thank you to Roz and Jamie for coming on for Nurses Week, saving our show.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody's health by telling them to go get an exam.
Awareness.
Yeah.
Awareness.
Yeah. Needs to be more awareness.
Sure.
You can find this Otherwise Fine podcast on Twitter at GATG Wild Podcast. Ben and I are on Twitter at Ben Remington, at Giles Farrell. We write for a website called Zone Coverage. You can follow them on Twitter at ZoneCoverageMN, ZoneCoverage.com, ZoneCoverage.com/wild for our Minnesota Wild coverage. This podcast is on iTunes. Please subscribe and leave us a rating if that is how you listen to podcasts. We're also on SoundCloud, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Play, pretty much anywhere. We also have a YouTube channel. Do subscribe for that for some fun videos when we get to those. Still not sure what the off-season will bring there, but we will figure that out.
Maybe we'll make a game show.
Yeah, we could do that. That's very radio show-like. So with that said, Ben and I will be back next week. Hopefully there will be a wee bit more of news to discuss, and we will talk to you later.
Later.
That's not resiliency. You're making it sound like we're good. That's all. I'm done.